are you, Clive?
I'm fine. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well. I have to warn you, I have a very nosy cat, and I tried to lock him out of the room, but he has busted through the door, so you may occasionally see a feline coming on camera. I'm so sorry. He just loves to talk with people and be a part of these things.
That's fine. I'm a cat person too, so that's cool.
Oh, good.
What's he called?
Toby,
Toby.
Tobyco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, Toby Go. And hi, Jenny. Ah,
Hi.
well, this is almost an unexpected pleasure, Jenny. I thought when we spoke about a year ago with the Honey Larks, and
Yeah.
I knew you all had separate careers, but when Sue Williams contacted me the other day and said, I'm sending you an album by the Moonshine Society, and I thought that name rings a bell. And then I finally got the actual physical CD here, and I thought,
Yeah.
this is music to my ears, literally.
Well, I loved that Sue forwarded me a note that you sent her. I'm like, I know Clive. I love Clive. So I'm very happy that you guys are connected, that she got that out to you.
Indeed. And I've been listening this afternoon. I've already played, as you probably saw on Instagram, I played 2 or 3 tracks last week on the radio, Jenny. So, and
Thank you.
one or two of my colleagues have already played your version of Rather Go Blind as well. So, you're finding your markets amongst the soul world over here as well as the blues world.
Thank you. It's funny because seeing the differences in what American DJs tend to gravitate towards in terms of what's on the album, and then what DJs overseas are choosing to be playing, they're completely different tracks.
Are they
And
indeed?
yeah, and I guess I didn't really expect that. It's delightful though, because I know that there's a variety of blues and soul sounds on this album.
Yeah,
And in the US, it's the more blues rock tracks that they seem to like to rotate. So
yeah,
we have two songs on here that feature Jason Ricci, an incredible harmonica player. They're both, they're both kickers, and those are the two that get the most play out here. But it seems like in the UK right now, people are loving Come On Home, which is a more soulful ballad.
yeah,
They're really liking Use Me on Gilded Splinters, which was a mashup of two songs, a Bill Withers song and a Dr. John song, but
yeah.
that's more of like the New Orleans R&B sound. So yeah, it's been kind of fun to see, I don't know, the different
Yeah,
regions and what they like more.
and it's kind of interesting you mentioned the split of styles between American jocks and British jocks, Jenny, because it's become, as you may have seen from my social media postings, I am not a great fan of rock blues, which is being
I've
marketed.
noticed that. I,
It seems to me that perhaps the Americana version of this thing is rock blues when I'm looking at blues rock. Uh,
right.
and it's a bit like somebody said to me the other day on a posting. I didn't realize there was a difference until you mentioned it, and I thought, well, there is, because I think it's the rock market. You're a blues person who happens to have a few rock tinges in the album, to my ears, and Sweet Thing is one that kind of, with the harmonica as well, that goes in that direction.
Yeah.
And also, in fact, oddly enough, what you just mentioned, the mashup of Use Me and Splinters also heads towards that of the heavier side of the market, Jenny.
Right.
But it's an interesting choice of mix of songs. How did that come about?
Well, so Use Me is a song that we tend to do at most of our live shows, and it really gives my guys in the band an opportunity to each take a solo and stretch a little bit. So that's probably the most improvised song that we do when we do it live. It's never the same, from show to show. But when we were going into the studio, it was really important to me to pay homage to two different artists who have meant a lot to me as a musician. And Dr. John was one of them, and he had passed away that same summer, maybe like a month before we were supposed to start recording. And so, just in the mental process of being on stage and hearing Use Me, sometimes I'll just get caught up in the music, and
Yeah.
here's Toby right here. And I'll start to hear other sounds in my head that could mash over, and Use Me on Gilded Splinters just popped in. It was like the good doctor was paying us a visit for a moment, and I told my
Ah,
guys, let's take it down for a second. I'm going to try something, and right there in front of the audience, just started doing it, and it worked so well. I said, all right, we're going to keep that, and we're going to put it on the album. So.
that's a good answer. Thank you for that, because there's two different styles really. Bill Withers' style is more introspective, and Max is more in your face kind of thing. And
Yes.
yeah, but you've managed to distill them into a Jenny style, which is great.
Well, I like to joke that Dr. John is my spirit animal. But I've adored every album he's ever put out, and just how he was always unapologetically himself. He was never putting on airs, and I just really love that about him. And then the other artist that I really wanted to pay homage to on the album was Johnny Winter.
Yeah.
And so the track on their Southern Road is actually a response to his song I'm Yours and I'm Hers. In
Okay.
in his song, he's talking to a woman basically saying, "Listen, baby, we're dating, but I'm also dating that girl and I'm dating that girl, and you just got to deal with it." And and in my mind I thought, well, what would she say in response to that? Because if that was me, I'd say, "Nobody, I'm out of here." So that's exactly what we did. We took his music, but this was the response from that woman. And Jason, who plays harmonica on it, was on a Grammy winning album with Johnny Winter. So it was so amazing to have that little bridge there, that
Yes.
connection that we could put on the album.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go back and listen to that again. So I listened through half of that this afternoon. And it kind of lurched a bit towards the rock field for my ears. So
Yeah.
I skipped to the next track after, but I'll go back and listen again. Now you mentioned the Johnny Winters bit as well, Jenny. So
Yeah.
when you know more about how a track was formulated, you kind of get a greater affinity with it, don't you? So it must be like that when you're performing as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I take a lot of pride in being able to talk to our audiences about the music before we play it. I think that as blues artists, we have a responsibility to carry that history forward. And I think the audience also appreciates it when you can give them a little backstory into
Yeah,
what you're about to play.
yeah.
So,
And the other thing that I live and die by on social media is when you do a cover, you have to do something with it, which is
yes.
precisely what you've done with your two versions of Mama He Treats You Daughter Mean, which is a kind of a funkier version of Ruth Brown's was more in your face honking R&B. Yours takes it sideways a couple of steps. And also, rather
Yes.
go blind again, you've taken it into a different direction than Etta James did. And there's so many versions of that around now, but yours has the Jenny Langer stamp on it.
Thank you. I didn't even want to record that one, to be completely honest with you, because I feel like so many incredible singers, especially female blues singers, have done their own versions. And I
Yeah,
completely agree with you. I don't see a point in covering a song unless you're going to put your stamp on it. But that is a song where if we're in concert and we play it, sometimes we get standing ovations. A lot of people have seen us do it, request it specifically.
yeah,
And there was a good friend of mine who's a wife of Anthony Swamp Dog Clark, who's a fabulous blues harmonica player here in the DC area. And she pulled me aside one time after one of our shows, and she said, "You know what? That's my favorite song that you do. Please record that song," because she knew we were going into the studio. And so in my head, I said, "Okay, for Marcella, if she says it's worth recording, all right, I will do it for Marcella." I'm so happy that we did, because it's
yeah.
gotten a great response.
Okay. The two tracks that I played last week that really hooked onto me were Biscuits, Bacon, and the Blues, which is a nice sort of vaudevillian New Orleans type thing, which is kind of how I guess you built it that way.
Yes. I think that there's a lack of songs out there where women can just say, one night stands or something that I enjoy, and bacon. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to be very honest here in these lyrics, but we're going to make it a little cheeky, and yeah, that is one of my favorites on the album.
Okay, yeah. And the other one that I really got into is the Deal with the Devil track, which kind of a story song with the ballad feel to it as well. But it really sort of hooks you. You've got to sit and listen to that.
Thank you. Yeah, the story in that song was a real life story that I lived through, and at the time when I was writing it, I was not thinking of other artists, but I've had a lot of people compare it to Dinah Washington.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I could totally hear her singing this. Yes. So I'm very happy that it came out in that way. And on that track, when we were in the studio, our bass player and our guitarist at the time decided to swap. And so the bass player is playing guitar, the guitarist is playing bass.
Now you mentioned Dinah Washington there. I was the other question I was going to ask you, which it doesn't, isn't it in your press releases and things? Who were you listening to as you were growing up, Jenny? I mean, I know you've said you played with all the greats as well, but there must have been people you heard as a child, either at school or at home, that hooked onto your brain that you've now got a sort of a subliminal influence of. Can you tell me a couple of people that you've listened to in that way?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, and out there, there's a lot of history of classic rock. You know, San Francisco was a hot spot. And so you had folks like Janis Joplin coming around and Jimi Hendrix coming around and Santana. And so the radio stations out there when I was a kid were still very much playing tracks from those artists and live clips from when they came through. And later as a teenager, because I loved that sound, while my peers were listening to people like NSYNC and Britney Spears, and I'm listening to classic rock, and I wanted to know, well, who was Led Zeppelin listening to? Who were the Rolling Stones listening to?
Yeah,
And it all came to the blues.
yeah.
And so by the time I was in college, and I moved to Boston, I went to Berklee College of Music for school. I actually was hosting a radio show on the Berklee Internet Radio Network that was a blues show. And it was just all my favorite albums that as a teenager I had scoured and self edified basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it came from, you know, Janis Joplin and Robert Plant and what the Stones were doing, but you know, they were listening to Big Mama Thornton and Memphis Minnie
Yeah.
and Howlin' Wolf. And so, yeah, so I just really dove deep into those sounds.
Yeah, the fact that you just brought those three names into the conversation is kind of it gives where your heart actually is in the music, Jenny. So we've got well, I know already you're a kindred spirit from the music, but it kind of cements the affinity there, which is not lovely to hear.
Well, I see from all that music behind you, you must do a lot of self edifying as well.
I sometimes wish that CDs had been invented 50 years earlier, because what you can see there is my vinyl collection, which is like 20,000 vinyl albums.
Oh, I would love to see that. I, I have a small collection, but it's mainly hard to find New Orleans funk LPs
Yeah,
from the 1960s through 70s.
yeah.
So it's a small collection, but I'm very proud of that collection. But yeah, yours, man, that sounds like years of love put into that.
It is, it is. And you mentioned my second home is New Orleans. So, and when I went there at 7 years in the early 80s, Jenny, for the Jazz Fest, which is
Yeah,
when I met people. I met Dr. John briefly, met Alan Toussaint briefly. I got to be friendly with Johnny Adams, the late Johnny Adams, Eddie Bow, one or two other people. It's a great place to be. And
yeah.
what I did find there, and I've still got the vinyl albums, I used to come home, Jenny, with a suitcase full of albums.
Ah,
You go out with a few clothes in your suitcase and you left plenty of room. So when you came back with like 30 or 40 vinyl albums, and of course, there's so much local label product, isn't there, in New Orleans that
yeah.
doesn't get outside of Louisiana, which is, as you find, is a treasure and a musical heritage to dream of.
Yes. Yes. Every time I go to New Orleans, I always have to stop at Peaches. That's my favorite music store in New Orleans. But there's a handful of great ones, and I just kind of do the circle. But I always start with Peaches.
Yeah.
And I want to leave the most amount of room in my bag for what I get from there.
There used to be a place called Leisure Landing right outside at the end of the Ninth Ward. We'd spend hours in Leisure Landing. It's about the size of an aircraft hangar.
Oh
You
my gosh.
came out of there with about 20 albums, and an English accent always helped with getting discounts on these things as well.
Did it? I gotta try that.
Okay, now I presume the Black Betty persona is now shelved somewhere.
Yeah, the persona, it was a nickname that was given to me when I was in college, and it was actually a nickname from a photographer. At the time, I was doing a lot of pinup modeling, and and a lot of these girls have stage names just like burlesque dancers do. And at the time, I was channeling a lot of Betty Page, and my hair was dyed black, and and when someone gives you a nickname, I think that that's way cooler than giving yourself a nickname. So I'm
Sure,
like, all
yeah.
right, I'm gonna roll with this. And I kept that for over 10 years, about 15 years. Um, and in the last couple years, just as an artist, I I kind of stopped feeling the need to have a stage character, if you will, when I
Yeah.
walked out, because I realized everything I was channeling was really me. It was always me. I just felt the need to kind of have a mask that gave me a little bit more courage when I went out there,
Yeah.
and I finally think I'm at the point where I don't need that anymore. So
No, you've
yeah,
matured into it now.
yeah, exactly. So I said, you know what? This is me. I don't need the stage name. It is Jenny Langer. I don't think I'm going to make a hard right turn and, pursue an accounting career now. This is me. I'm a musician, and so here we are.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of being a musician, the two fellow musicians or singers that I had the pleasure of talking to you with earlier in the year, uh,
Yes.
Holly and Carly, you presumably got another album coming out with the girls, perhaps late for Christmas this year. What's the plans there?
So, it's been a strange year, obviously, for everybody globally. We did just record another single that is a little tongue in cheek humorous, like our holiday single was last year.
Good.
And so, putting the finishing touches on that. And then we're in the process right now of songwriting as a trio so that we have a strong album when we finally do release a full product. And I'm looking probably 2022 for that.
Okay, well, that's something to look forward to and to cherish and relish because it really caught the ear, as you can imagine, quite a lot. The
I
chemistry of
was
you guys.
I was just having lunch with them before I got back home to chat with you. So I told them that you and I were going to be chatting. So they both say hi.
Oh, that's great, lovely. Yeah. What I'm also going to have to do, I'm looking at your website on the other computer here. I'm going to have to
Hmm.
buy online the live in uh,
Oh, Shanghai.
Shanghai because there's such a diversity. That's the fella. That's the one.
Yeah.
There's a diversity of styles on there, Jenny, that kind of again backgrounds the southern R&B of Sugar Coated Love, the Memphis stuff of breaking up somebody's home. So
Yeah.
your background is there again encapsulated in one album. How did that come about?
So the album is live in Shanghai because we really did record it live in Shanghai, China. We had a 3-month residency at the House of Blues and Jazz, and we went over there basically as the backing band for Charlie Sales, who is an incredible blues harmonica player and
Yeah.
singer. He has a few albums out, and he's based here in the Washington, D.C. area. So we were often his backing band here in America, and the venue with 1 month's notice offered us a 3-month contract to basically come live in China and perform 6 nights a week. So we we were over the moon to have that opportunity. The songs that are on that album are all covers, and some of it you hear Charlie either singing or he's playing harmonica as well. But that was really, those songs were the staples of our shows about a decade ago. So
Yeah.
when Moonshine Society was first starting, you
Mm.
know, this is what we were starting with. And you're right, there's a lot of Texas style blues on there. Um, I love Luann Barton and everything she did with and without Double Trouble, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan. So there's a lot of that on there. What was really cool was we were able to keep a lot of the room noise from the audience in
Oh
there so we
yeah.
could get reactions. And it was a party. It was a party like every night that we played there. And as an American blues artist, you don't know what to expect when you go, to a place like Shanghai. It's
Different
so foreign
culture.
to us. Yeah, and how it would be received, but they loved the blues music, and people, even if you couldn't have a conversation in the same language, they were still recognizing some of the songs.
Yeah.
And I think that that just speaks to how powerful music can be.
Oh, indeed, and that's the crux of this whole thing, Jenny. Music is a universal language, isn't it? It's a global language.
Yes,
As Little
absolutely.
Richard once said, it makes the blind see, it makes the deaf hear, all those kind of things. Music gets everybody together. And the blues perhaps more so in a lot of ways because there's an emotional strand there that hooks us all together.
Yeah, and I think that blues music, this might sound strange, but to me, blues music is a very human style of music.
Hmm.
It's a very natural, raw type of music. When you're listening to a blues album, 99% of the time, I'm sure the instruments there, someone was physically playing that instrument
Yeah,
versus a lot of daytime music that we hear, it's synthesized and it was still a human making it, but it's not a human touching the instrument,
sure.
creating sound. So I think for me that's part of why I'm drawn to this style of music is just, it's a human activity and this is how I'm expressing myself as a human being.
Well, that's a good underline for this whole interview, I think. And I'm certainly going to be putting Sweet Thing up there as one of my albums of the year, because I think it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I'll carry. What I was going to ask you, do you? This is going to New Orleans. Do you know? Are you familiar with the name Tiffany Pollock?
Yes. Yes, I met Tiffany in Memphis last year at the IBCs,
Yeah,
and she works with Betsy Brown,
she does. Yeah,
who I worked with in the US for a little bit of PR
yeah,
on Sweet Thing. Yeah, she has such a fun aesthetic. She's a great songwriter, very
yeah.
entertaining vocalist.
Yeah, only I Betsy sent me the album Bayou Liberty, which is Tiffany's new album, which is
Yeah.
again, it's got a range of styles similar to yours in concept on the album. And I've hooked up with her through Instagram. And
Oh,
because of the hurricane recently in New Orleans, she's had internet problems. So I'm about to try and fix up a Zoom with Tiffany just to do a one-to-one like this with her, because she has a musical style which kind of sits in the same bed as yours, as it were.
sure. And I think John Namath produced that album, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yeah.
he's fabulous. I just love him as a singer and a performer too.
Yeah. Right. Well, the music once again has brought us together, Jenny. It's been a pleasure talking with you these last 20 minutes or so. It's a lovely smile on your face, great music
Ah,
in the
thank you.
grooves. Hopefully, you'll be coming to this side of the pond at some point in the next year. I'll keep in touch with Sue as to what your plans are.
Yes, I know that we have some bookings in Germany that are going to be happening early March, and so I'm going to see if maybe I can start in the UK late February
Yeah.
and just make that a European run.
Yeah.
And we were hoping for this November, but this pandemic just unpredictable. So
Yeah.
may or may not see me out there just with a guitarist in November, but I will certainly be out there early next year.
Right. And meanwhile, this is going to get more play. So, Jenny Langer, thank you very much for your time. Lovely talking with you again. We'll catch up again real soon.
I appreciate it. Good to see you, Clive. Thank you.
And good luck to your cat as well.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.
Talk soon.